Philip K. Dick spent his life convinced that reality was, well, broken. The science fiction author, whose paranoid visions have, colonized contemporary cinema, believed we might be living in multiple realities at the same time, that our memories could be artificial, and that what we take for real might just be an elaborate simulation. He was either crazy or prophetic. Looking at our current moment, where deepfakes blur truth, where we inhabit filter bubbles of curated reality, and where cinema increasingly depicts reality as something malleable, the answer seems, honestly, kind of obvious. Dick's work has become a strange attractor for filmmakers who are grappling with our reality crisis. Blade Runner, Total Recall, Minority Report, The Adjustment Bureau. His stories keep getting adapted because they feel less like fiction and more like, well, documentary footage from our emerging future. But here's the twist. By filming Dick's visions, cinema may actually be manifesting the fractured reality he warned about. The sheer volume of Dick adaptations reveals something beyond Hollywood's hunger for intellectual property. Directors return to his work like moths to a flame, drawn by questions that honestly burn brighter each year. Ridley Scott didn't just adapt Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. He created in Blade Runner a visual language for existential uncertainty that every subsequent film about artificial consciousness pretty much has to reference. The rain-soaked streets, the ambiguous humanity, the origami unicorns that may or may not mean something. These images have, colonized our collective imagination so thoroughly that we see our own cities through their lens. Remember our discussion of cinema as consciousness-shaping technology. Dick takes this even further. In his cosmology, reality itself is a kind of shared fiction that can be rewritten. He experienced what he called 2374, a series of visions suggesting our reality was actually ancient Rome with a holographic overlay. Crazy maybe. But isn't this exactly what we're experiencing now, with competing political narratives that seem to describe entirely different worlds? The 2374 experience, really deserves deeper examination because it crystallizes Dick's entire philosophical project. After a wisdom tooth extraction, Dick began experiencing these, quite strange visions. A pink beam of light transmitting information directly into his consciousness, revealing that apparently the Roman Empire never ended and that we live in a black iron prison of illusion. He spent the remaining years of his life writing an 8,000-page exegesis trying to decode these experiences. Was it psychosis? Divine revelation? Or was Dick experiencing perhaps what happens when someone sees through the collective fiction we call reality? What matters isn't whether Dick's visions were real, but how they've infected our cultural imagination. When the Wachowskis created The Matrix, they weren't just borrowing Dick's ideas. They were giving his paranoid cosmology a sort of technological update. The Matrix is, in effect, the black iron prison rendered in code. Neo's awakening is Dick's anamnesis, you might say, digitized. The red pill or blue pill choice has become our culture's primary metaphor for seeing through consensus reality, precisely because it dramatizes Dick's core insight. Reality is a choice, and most people choose the comfortable lie. Dick's concept of the black iron prison, the idea that we're trapped in a false reality controlled by malevolent forces, has become, the default setting for contemporary cinema. From The Matrix to Westworld to Everything Everywhere, all at once, our films obsessively return to the theme of breaking free from false realities. But here's where Dick's paranoia meets co-created reality. What if these films aren't just reflecting our anxiety about reality, but actively fragmenting it? Consider for a moment how Westworld doesn't just depict artificial beings questioning their reality. Oh no, it goes further. It actually trains viewers to question their own, you see. The show's labyrinthine timeline, its unreliable narrators, and those constant reality shifts, well, they rather mirror Philip K. Dick's technique of ontological vertigo. By the end, viewers aren't simply watching characters discover they're robots. No, they're experiencing their own uncertainty about memory, identity, and consciousness. The show, in a way, becomes a delivery system for Dickian doubt. Everything Everywhere. All at once takes Dick's multiple reality concept and, well, pushes it to absurdist extremes. But beneath all the hot dog fingers and raccoon chefs, there's pure Dickian philosophy at work. Every possible reality exists simultaneously, and it's our choices that determine which one we inhabit. The film's emotional core, a mother and daughter finding each other across infinite realities, suggests perhaps that love might be the only constant in Dick's fractured multiverse. It's Dick's paranoia transformed into cosmic comedy, but you know, the underlying reality crisis still remains. When millions watch The Truman Show, they're not just entertaining the possibility that reality is staged. No, they're participating in a collective ritual that, oddly enough, makes reality feel more staged. And when Inception teaches audiences to question whether they're dreaming, it plants seeds of ontological doubt that, well, bloom in everyday life. Cinema, in this sense, becomes a reality virus, spreading Dick's paranoid insights through the collective unconscious. The viral nature of these reality-questioning films can't be overstated. After The Matrix, people began seriously discussing simulation theory. After Inception, people started checking for so-called totems to confirm they were awake. After The Truman Show, people developed actual psychiatric conditions, believing their lives were being broadcast. These films don't just depict paranoia, they transmit it. They're functioning exactly as Dick feared, or perhaps hoped, as tools for breaking down consensus reality. Christopher Nolan seems particularly infected by Dick's vision, even when not directly adapting his work. Memento explores Dick's obsession with unreliable memory. The Prestige reveals reality as elaborate performance. Tenet suggests time itself might be as malleable as memory. Nolan's films, well, they teach audiences to distrust linear narrative, stable identity and consensus reality, core Dickian lessons delivered as blockbuster entertainment. Charlie Kaufman operates as Dick's spiritual heir in cinema. Being John Malkovich, eternal sunshine of the spotless mind, Synecdoche, New York. Each film destabilizes reality in distinctly Dickian ways. Kaufman's characters don't just question reality, they get lost in recursive loops of self-reference and simulation. His films feel like what would happen if Dick's exegesis became self-aware and, started making movies about itself. McLuhan understood that electric media would, well, retribalize us. Dick saw that this retribalization might mean the return of competing reality tunnels, of parallel worlds existing, simultaneously. Social media proves him right. We literally inhabit different realities based on our feeds. But cinema got there first, teaching us to accept malleable reality as entertainment before we ever encountered it as, well, political crisis. The prescience of Dick's vision becomes clear when we examine how cinema prepared us for our current reality wars. Long before Facebook created filter bubbles, films were teaching us that different people could inhabit completely different realities. Rashomon showed us the same event from incompatible perspectives. The Sixth Sense revealed that we might be living in overlapping realities without even knowing it. Fight Club suggested we might not even know what we ourselves are doing half the time. These films didn't cause our reality crisis, but they prepared us for it. They taught us the cognitive flexibility needed to navigate a world where truth is contested, where reality is, well, multiple, where what you see depends on which feed you follow. Cinema became a training ground for the ontological warfare Dick predicted. The most Dickian development? AI-generated content. Soon we won't really be able to distinguish so-called real footage from synthetic creation. The reality wars Dick predicted aren't coming, they're here already. And you know, cinema has actually been training us for this moment, teaching us to navigate multiple realities, to hold contradictory truths at the same time, and, well, to find meaning in the midst of ontological chaos. Deepfakes represent the ultimate Dickian nightmare, or perhaps liberation, depending on your perspective. When any footage can be faked, when any person can be digitally puppeted, when evidence itself becomes unreliable, we enter Dick's world completely. Films like The Congress and Marjorie Prime explore this terrain, showing how digital simulation doesn't just threaten truth but actually offers new forms of meaning-making. If everything can be faked, maybe authenticity was always just an illusion. Black Mirror operates as Dick's Twilight Zone, with each episode serving as a paranoid parable about technology's reality-warping potential. San Junipero offers digital afterlife as a kind of liberation from physical reality. Bandersnatch makes viewers complicit in reality manipulation, through interactive choices. USS Callister shows how digital realities can become prisons, really indistinguishable from Dick's Black Iron prison. The show doesn't just warn us about technological dangers, it demonstrates how technology actually makes Dick's reality-breaking visions achievable. Dick believed that breaking free from false reality required what he called anamnesis, the recovery of lost memories, particularly memories of our true divine nature. Contemporary cinema seems, obsessed with this process. Characters constantly discover their memories are false, their identities constructed, their worlds simulated. In teaching us to question consensus reality, are these films preparing us for some collective awakening? Arrival presents language itself as reality-shaping technology, echoing Dick's belief that whoever controls language controls reality. Annihilation suggests that reality might be actively mutating, rewriting itself and us in the process. Under the Skin presents human reality from an alien perspective, making the familiar strange in ways Dick would recognize. These films don't just question reality, they offer tools for perceiving it differently. The anamnesis theme reaches its apex in films about memory manipulation. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind asks whether we're still ourselves without our memories. Memento shows how easily identity dissolves without continuous narrative. Total Recall, both versions, make Dick's question literal. If you can't trust your memories, can you trust anything? These films prepare us for a future where memory, like everything else, becomes editable content. Or are they deepening the maze? Each new reality-bending film, it adds another layer to the labyrinth, making it harder to find any solid ground. We're becoming comfortable with reality as special effect, as narrative construction, as, choose your own adventure. Dick warned about this comfort. He wanted us to break free, not to become connoisseurs of our own imprisonment. The comfort problem deserves serious consideration. Have we become too good at navigating unreality? When audiences cheer for increasingly complex reality-bending narratives, when mindfuck becomes a positive review category, When we prize films for how thoroughly they destabilize our sense of the real, are we perhaps training ourselves to accept a world without truth? Dick's paranoia was productive because he never stopped looking for the real reality behind the illusion. But what if we've given up the search? Russian Doll, Dark, the OA. Television has embraced Dick's reality breaking with particular enthusiasm. These shows use the serial format to slowly dismantle viewers' reality assumptions. By the time you realize the ground has shifted, you're honestly too invested to stop watching. You become complicit in your own ontological destabilization. The binge-watching format intensifies this effect. Hours of reality-questioning content mainline directly into consciousness. The ultimate Dickian question really is this: if reality is a shared fiction, who's writing the script? In our previous discussions, we explored how collective viewing shapes reality. But Dick adds a darker possibility. Someone, or perhaps something, might be deliberately using cinema to rewrite our shared fiction for its own purposes. The reality wars, well, they're not just happening on screen, they're happening through screens. This question becomes, rather urgent when we consider who controls our reality-shaping machinery. A handful of corporations, honestly, determine which realities get billion-dollar budgets, global distribution, cultural penetration. When Disney owns Marvel, Star Wars and Fox, they're not just controlling entertainment, they're controlling mythologies that shape how billions understand heroism, good and evil, the very nature of reality itself. Dick's paranoia about reality control, it turns out, wasn't paranoid enough. The streaming age, well, it really intensifies this control. Algorithms don't just recommend content, they shape which realities we inhabit. Netflix doesn't just know what you watch, it knows which realities you're comfortable with, which ones challenge you, which ones keep you subscribing. The feedback loop between viewer data and content creation means, in a sense, we're collectively programming our own reality prison, one binge session at a time. But Dick also offers hope. His protagonists, the small, flawed human characters who see through the illusion, suggest that individual consciousness can, resist reality control. Films like The Truman Show and The Matrix show single individuals breaking free through gnosis, that is, direct knowledge that something is wrong. Maybe cinema's reality breaking serves a dual function. It destabilizes consensus reality, but it also, trains us to recognize and resist false realities. The rise of puzzle box films and shows suggests audiences a hunger for Dick's brand of reality questioning. Primer, Coherence, The Endless. These are low-budget films that punch above their weight by making audiences active participants in reality construction. These films don't just present multiple realities, they require viewers to build their own understanding, to become, co-creators rather than passive consumers. It's Dick's interactive cosmology as entertainment. Virtual and augmented reality represent, the literalization of Dick's vision. When you can put on a headset and inhabit any reality, when digital overlays can transform your physical environment, when the boundary between real and virtual dissolves, we're living in Dick's world. Films like Ready Player One and Free Guy explore this terrain, but honestly, they're already behind the curve. Reality has become more Dickian than Dick imagined. Perhaps that's Dick's greatest gift to us, not answers, but, better questions. In a world where reality itself has become, well, contested territory, where cinema serves as both the map and the terrain, we really need his particular brand of paranoid clarity. The films adapting his work aren't just entertainment. They're, in a sense, training manuals for navigating the reality wars. The questions, they just multiply, don't they? If we're in a simulation, does it matter? If memories can be false, what makes identity real? If reality is consensus, what happens when consensus fractures? If cinema shapes consciousness, who decides which films get made? And if we can't trust our senses, what can we trust? Dick didn't answer these questions. He made them, well, impossible to ignore. His final gift might be, the recognition that paranoia, properly applied, is actually a form of awakening. Not the destructive paranoia that sees enemies everywhere, but the productive kind that recognizes reality as constructed and therefore, well, changeable. Every Dick adaptation, every reality-bending film, every moment of ontological vertigo in cinema serves as a small awakening, a sort of crack in consensus reality, through which something else might, just possibly, emerge. We're all living in Philip K. Dick's world now. Cinema is both the evidence and the cause. Every film that questions reality advances his project of ontological disruption. Every viewer who leaves the theatre unsure what's real joins his resistance against consensus reality. The reality wars he predicted aren't future. They're now playing out across millions of screens in billions of minds, reshaping the shared fiction we call reality. The question isn't whether reality is a shared fiction, it's who gets to hold the pen. Dick's genius was recognizing that in a world of competing authors, the only solution is to become a writer yourself. Cinema gives us the tools, narrative techniques, visual languages, reality hacking methodologies. Whether we use them to deepen the maze or find the exit depends on us. In the end, Dick's message through cinema might be this: if reality is broken, maybe that's not a bug, but a feature. Maybe the cracks are where the light gets in. Maybe the reality wars are how we evolve. Maybe questioning everything is the only sane response to an insane world. Maybe paranoia is just another word for paying attention. The films keep coming, each one a new assault on consensus reality, a new tool for liberation or control. We watch, we question, we wonder. Somewhere Philip K. Dick is laughing or crying, or both. In his fractured cosmos, there's no reason it can't be both.